Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today I'm talking about the new album from The Black Dog, My Brutal Life 2. Yeah, what the heck, what's one more video on The Black Dog? I've covered all the others they've put out since I started this channel nearly a decade ago, and this'll now bring the count of videos I've done on their work up to a nice round number of 10. So I finally broke down and put together a playlist of all the other videos I've made on them so far over the years, which you can find in the description. I really gotta do that full series on them at some point so I can get around to talking about the 10 albums they came out with before I started this channel. They do have a very interesting history and their fair share of proper classics, very much worth going out of your way to hear. There's a good reason I've been as dedicated as I've been to covering them this much. But in terms of new releases, I am admittedly really starting to run out of unique things to say about each one, and I suspect I may need to start just relegating them to some stuff I miss segments going forward. Since at this point, if you've been following them, you should already know exactly what to expect and whether or not this will be for you before you even hit play on the album or click on this video. They're still consistently delivering lots of quality in their typical cold and brooding mixes of ambient and techno, often loosely inspired by the brutalist architecture around their home neighborhood in Sheffield, and their whole run of albums in the last 2 or 3 years have all delivered consistent enough quality where anytime they do release a new album it'll be a purchase for me on site. But with this much output, mostly in the same kinds of themes and frameworks, there's only so much actual new discussion material to be gleaned from a new album of theirs at this point. Still, they did manage to turn my head with an intriguing idea one more time. I was looking forward to this latest album in particular because it's obviously a direct sequel to their 2023 album, My Brutal Life. What I personally consider to be easily their best project to come out of this recent explosion of output, and an album I thought hit well enough to notch an honorable mention on my year-end list that year. That project both had a level of subtle variety in sound and tight structuring combined with a surprising level of emotional resonance that seemed to be really making the best use of every single one of their core strengths. Getting another round of that sounded intriguing in itself. Now, the sequel perhaps unfortunately does not reach the heights its predecessor could for me. In general, I found this album to run together and fall into the background much more easily than the first one, but I did enjoy it about as much as I've enjoyed anything else the Black Dog have put out in the last couple of years. And I do appreciate this album's commitment to that more emotional and cinematic side to their sound, which their previous album, Sleep Deprivation, also leaned even further into. This album kind of feels like the midpoint between the approaches of Sleep Deprivation and the first My Brutal Life. The album starts out with a collection of more rhythmic, techno-influenced cuts that more or less pick up immediately from where the first My Brutal Life left off, right down to this album's opener, Baton House, feeling like a direct mirror to that album's functional closer, Baton Brute, with the same kinds of sparse minor key melodic keyboard tones, going over a similar minimal and stripped-back beat, which is pretty much just a kick and that's about it. I think they're even in the exact same key too, although the tune is obviously quite different. From there we have possibly the album's most energetic moments, which isn't saying much, but they do both feel louder and more percussion-centric than most other cuts on the album. I Dream in Concrete has all these mildly colorful clouds of broken synth chords covered in reverb over buzzing bass and slapping percussion. And Internal Panoramas is the album's most techno-ish moment, focused almost entirely on simple stripped-back beats and a few bass rumbles before the last minute gets a bit brighter and more melodic to fill out the mix, feeling like rays of sunlight peeking out over the darkness the track set before. The next 3 cuts, though, are all straight ambient drones, kind of in the same style you'd find on Sleep Deprivation. You got some twinkling melodic textures over a monolithic pad in The End of Back to Back, some fittingly icy pad chord progressions on Cold Again, and even some more introverted humming on And Then They Were Gone. All enjoyable, all hitting nice enough tender emotional moments, none of which were particular standouts to me in context, and those 3 tracks often just feel like one long track. Motif Lasdun grabs my attention more, with its minimal synth patterns feeling like cold drips of water over its more rhythmic arrangement, and Pioneering Different Approaches strips itself back down to ambience again, albeit a more major key blend with individual plucks and bass notes bleeding into a sea of warm synth strings. Although the same blend is corrupted into a more minor key variation on following track Aesthetics Over Ethics, which has a much less pleasant blend of kinda mid-range bass arpeggios that feel markedly harsher and more foreboding. That one kinda loses me a bit, but the rest of the album is able to pull me back in much more and deliver a whole bunch of my favorites. The cloudy drone interlude B6070 isn't anything to write home about, but Foxton Stop Off has some mildly higher-pitched blends of pads which feel much dreamier and more uplifting by their standards. Skyline Disasters has all these bubbling effects going up next to even higher-pitched keyboard planks for a similarly cloudy and dreamlike effect. And then finally, the album ends on probably the strongest moments on the bunch, in Park Hill Forever, named for the much thicker synth string blends which get much more dramatic and carry a level of stakes and intensity not carried by most of the rest of the album. Always really like these moments when it feels like the Black Dog are going more orchestral or movie soundtrack inspired. Bit of similar energy to the best moments of something like Clark's Playground in a Lake, I guess. But yeah, that's My Brutal Life 2. It's definitely exactly what you would expect out of a new Black Dog album at this point. Brooding ambience, good melodies that fit the brutalist tone, a few more rhythmic underpinnings, etc. It's all very familiar, well-trodden territory for them, and I can't say this is like one of my new favorite works they've put out. It's not on the same level as the album it aimed to act as a direct sequel to, but I do like this more than Sleep Deprivation. It feels both more dynamic and more tightly constructed, even if this feels less unique in the overall scope of their catalog. Maybe it'll end up hitting more for me later once we get to the colder parts of the year. I mean, listening to the Black Dog tends not to be conducive to the excessively hot and muggy summer we're getting in Chicago right now. Again, you could probably already guess whether or not this would be for you before you clicked on the video. If you've gotten sick of the Black Dog style lately, or just weren't a fan of their post-silenced material to begin with, this probably isn't going to do anything to change your mind. But if you thought this would be for you and were waiting for my confirmation for whatever reason, I can pretty much confirm it's as enjoyable as anything else they've done lately, and I'm overall feeling a 7.5 out of 10 on it. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. Shout out to my Patreon supporters, they're awesome people, you want to add yourself to that list. Link to my Patreon is in the description. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.